So what is all this noise about? Who has created this noise? It's very sad. I can only say this.
But when you say he was willing to help,
He's always been willing to help. When has he not been willing to help? Abrogation broke his heart, that's all. And the way Delhi treated him broke his heart. That's what it is. Omar said many years ago that this is the most difficult job in the country, and I agree with it. And that's why his father can manage it better than he can. I haven't had the gumption to tell Dr. Farooq what to do and what not to do, very rarely. The reality is that Farooq was extremely emotional that day. And he wept. Every time I've written a book, there's been a hullabaloo, because I try to stay as close to the truth as possible.
hello and welcome to a very special interview with former Raw Chief AS Dulat. Mr. Dulat has just authored this book, The Chief Minister and the Spy, An Unlikely Friendship. The book has already become a bestseller, but it has also raised a political storm. Let's dive straight into the book and the controversy, Mr. Dulat, and I start with my first question. Farooq Abdullah is deeply hurt. He's been one of your friends. In fact, the whole book talks about your friendship, how it evolved. You know, you've portrayed as if Farooq Abdullah, the tallest leader, you call him that, as somebody who was willing to help Delhi abrogate Article 370, which is such a sensitive issue for Kashmir. How do you explain what you've written on page 208?
That English is a difficult language to understand. Read it.
I will read it out, sir.
Read it. Firstly, you don't judge a book by one sentence. The book has to be read in its totality. And I regret to say I don't think Dr. Saab has read the book.
Okay, let me just read out that para, because that is that one.
Are you listening to what I'm saying?
I'm listening.
Yeah, okay.
You're saying you believe that Farooq Saab has not read the whole book.
He hasn't read the book.
Okay.
Not the whole book. He hasn't read the book.
He hasn't read the book.
Because somewhere he said Safia has read the book.
Okay. In fact, I will come to Safia, his daughter, Safia Abdullah Khan, because she's also tweeted about it. But first, the paragraph which has led to the storm. Farooq was terribly hurt. Just as the BJP...
Who created this storm? I don't know. Farooq has not quoted this para, or I have not heard him quote this para. So I don't know who's raised this storm. Anyway.
So let me read the paragraph. Farooq was terribly hurt. Just as
was he not hurt? You yourself have said he was heartbroken.
I have said he was heartbroken. When I met him after the abrogation,
so
I found a different Farooq Abdullah, a very broken man.
Same
But
here,
allow me to read out this paragraph.
Okay, carry on.
Farooq was terribly hurt, and you are acknowledging that he was hurt.
Of course.
Just as the BJP had never hidden its intention towards Kashmir as far as Article 370 was concerned, so too had Farooq been extremely open about his willingness to work with Delhi.
Okay.
Sir, 1 minute. Maybe he said the NC, meaning the National Conference, could have had the proposal passed in the Legislative Assembly in Jammu and Kashmir. We would have helped, he told me when I met him in 2020. Why were we not taken into confidence? We would have helped. That seems to be the damaging line, that Farooq Abdullah was willing to help the Modi government get rid of an article that every Kashmiri identifies with.
You can understand that paragraph. What it says is 2-3 things. One is that Farooq was deeply hurt. He was heartbroken. Secondly, he says he's always worked with
New
Delhi. Third, which is given somewhere else, that his father, he, his children, his grandchildren, everybody has been with India. So why were we not taken into confidence? Now, while saying all those things, if Farooq has said, maybe we could even have helped if we had been taken into confidence. So what is all the noise about? If you want to read a book, please read the whole book. You know, And no less a person than the great M.K. Narayanan has written a foreword in the book in which he has praised Farooq no end, apart from being kind to me. So what is all this noise about? Who has created this noise? It's very sad. I can only say this. The whole intention of the book is to appreciate, to sing, to praise the man. There's nothing else. There's no other. I had nothing else in mind.
But when you say he was willing to help,
He's always been willing to help. When has he not been willing to help?
but sir, willing to help, get rid of an article which
Where
every
does it
Kashmir...
say willing to help to get rid
It
of?
is...
Please, if I have said that, then I'm wrong. But I have not said that. Please say where it says willing.
It is in the context of the abrogation. The chapter is called The Abrogation and its Aftermath.
Yeah, so the abrogation broke his heart. That's all. And the way Delhi treated him broke his heart. That's what it is. And this book is not about one sentence. It is about Farooq Abdullah and the great man that he is.
So let me ask you, do you regret that sentence?
No, I don't regret the sentence. No, I don't. If you want me to regret it because of the noise that's been made, the noise has not been made because of that sentence. You know, every time I have written a book, there's been a hullabaloo. People don't like what I say or I write, because I try to stay as close to the truth as possible.
I don't think it's about the media or a particular publication. It is to do with the fact that, one, you said...
Where did that sentence come out of?
He was willing to, from your book, he was willing to help.
No,
Second,
who put it out?
Sir, it's in the book.
No, who put it out? No,
When a book is released, it will be quoted.
I want to ask you a question. If Hindustan Times didn't have this book, would there have been a controversy?
I mean, somebody else would have picked on it. I'm saying anybody could have picked on it because it's a part of the book. That's my point.
If Dr. Farooq Abdullah had come for the launch, there would have been no controversy.
But he's upset. He's saying it was a cheap stunt.
He says it's a cheap stunt.
Yes, he gave an interview in which he called the book a cheap stunt, that particular paragraph, and he said it was an effort to try and sell the book. I'm quoting him.
Okay. Fine. If Farooq says it, then it's fine.
It's fine with you?
Fine with me, yeah. Whatever Farooq says is fine with me.
You don't want to contest the fact that it was a cheap stunt?
No. If he sees it as a cheap stunt, if this book is a cheap stunt...
Not the book, that paragraph.
But the book is the book. You know, how can one paragraph be a cheap stunt and the book not be? Then the whole book is a cheap stunt.
Sir, okay, let me try and explain this. Your book is dedicated to Kashmir and the Kashmiris.
Yeah.
Both of who you know extremely well. As you know Farooq Abdullah extremely well. Now when you say that, and you're quoting him to say that he said he would have even brought it to the Legislative Assembly. First of all, the family says in 2020 when you met him, there was no Legislative Assembly. How could he have brought it to the Legislative Assembly?
Ask Farooq. This is what he said, now that you're asking me. I haven't said it till date, but now that you're asking me, I'm telling you. That's what he said. He was hurt. He was deeply hurt. He was deeply disturbed. Basically, he was saying, I've always been with Delhi, and why has Delhi treated me like this? That is the crux of that whole paragraph. Nothing more, nothing less.
So, do you think you worded it badly, or that is what actually he told you?
Now, what do you want me to say?
I don't know, I'm asking you, because it's...
I don't know, I don't have an answer there.
Do you believe, sir, that you've lost a friend?
No, I don't believe. If he believes so, I mean, I don't know. I haven't lost a friend.
And if he believes so, is that something that upsets you?
Yeah, it upset me for a day, but it's upset her for much more.
Your wife, you're talking about?
My wife, yeah, I'm talking about my wife. Because she's been a part of that family, And she always treated them as part of our family. I've said so more than once that it's hurt her more than it's hurt me. I'm okay, I'm fine.
But you're saying that you don't feel you've lost a friend, but Farooq...
If he thinks he's lost a friend, then it's sad. It's sad.
Did you try and reach out to him after, the storm
I
started?
have tried to reach out to him umpteen times, before, after, wherever. I always try to reach out to him. It's not an issue, it's not a problem.
Were you able to speak to him after the controversy? After he called it a cheap stunt?
No, I haven't been able to speak to him, except that on the day of the launch, Wajad called him up and said, we are speaking from the launch or something like that, and this fellow has said a whole lot of good things about you. Just speak to him. He came on the line, but there was nothing of any consequence said.
You've described Farooq Abdullah as being one of the tallest leaders of Jammu and Kashmir.
Of India.
Of India, okay, I stand.
The launch, I said, because
of the world as well, I was there.
Yeah, colleague said.
So where do you think you've left Farooq Abdullah, this very tall leader, in the context of what he perceives as a betrayal, that, he was willing to sup with New Delhi when it came to...
Well, why are you stuck up, hung on to that one sentence? Have you not read the book?
I've read the book.
Why don't you quote from the book? Why don't you quote the last paragraph from the book?
I will.
Why don't you quote from Narayanan on the book?
I will. Sir, I'm coming.
No, you're not coming to that. You're going on and on and on about one sentence, one paragraph.
And
I object to that. No, okay. This is not very fair.
Fair enough. I take your objection on board.
No, what are you? You're not a judge or something, Shami.
No, I'm not a judge, sir.
But you're talking rubbish now. How long can you keep saying the same old bloody thing? One sentence, one sentence, one sentence. Why don't you come to the crux of the bloody book? Will you quote the last paragraph of this book? Will you read it out
I will read it out immediately.
Yeah, read it out. And read what Narayanan has to say about this.
I can understand you're upset because...
I'm not upset,
but Farooq is upset.
Making me upset. No, it's not Farooq who's talking to me. You go on and on and on about one sentence. Is there nothing else in this book?
Allow me to read the last paragraph. He who comes must, of course, go. After a while, remembrance also slowly fades. But what remains is greatness. The great man's saga will not end in a whimper, because Farooq is not an ordinary man. Delhi cannot afford to give up on Farooq, because without the singer, the song of Kashmir is not complete.
Why didn't you start with this para?
I wanted to get the controversy out of the way.
It's not out of the way. You've gone on about it for the last 10 minutes.
You asked me to read this para, sir. I just read it out.
You read it out because I'm asking you to read it. Because why didn't you start with this para? Or why don't you start with some other para in this book?
Because it's best to get the elephant out of the room.
No, there's nothing about the elephant. I explained it to you. The context of that whole para, or that whole sentence, is that Farooq was heartbroken.
Right.
And he said, I've always been with Delhi. My family has always been with Delhi. Why could we not have been taken into conflict?
Okay, let me ask you my next question. Do you think Farooq Abdullah has suffered politically?
I don't think so.
Because he's always sided with Delhi.
I don't think he will suffer because of this book.
I'm not talking about the book.
This book, if he's... What are you talking about then?
I'm talking about his siding with Delhi. Has he suffered because of that? Because...
No, he's not suffered because of that.
You also...
I think his son will suffer more than him.
Why is that, sir?
I don't need to give explanations for everything.
Okay, sir. You talk about 1984, the midnight coup. I was coming to that when I talked about betrayal. Can we talk a little more about that betrayal? Because that, as you said, it's a scar which has gone very deep into his psyche, and you're not sure whether he'll ever get over it.
Yeah, possibly not.
And what would you think? Why do you think he won't, and what is the reason?
Because of the relationship between the Gandhis and the Abdullahs. You know, I've written something about Rahul also in this book. Why don't you read that?
I will. I'm coming to it. I'm coming to everything. Will you allow me to read Safia Street?
That's not in the book.
No, it's not in the book, but it's a reaction to the book. I mean, I'm asking you.
Okay, ask. Yeah. So is the book about the tweet, or is the tweet about the book?
No, it is.
What is the tweet about? Her love for me, or her?
No, her tweet is not about her love for you. Her tweet is about her anger about that 208 paragraph.
Okay, let's see what she says.
I have your permission to read it?
Yeah.
I have never trusted Dulat as far as I could throw him. He was always a spy whose loyalty was only to himself. He never cared who he threw under the bus. I have read this book and he has played fast and loose with the truth once again.
Yeah, she says about the book, she not mentioned that paragraph. So the book is all lies. That's what she's saying.
I think it's in the context of that paragraph, but
How you're making it, she hasn't mentioned that paragraph. She says, I always tell lies. Whenever I've written a book, it's lies. That's what she said.
That doesn't upset you?
No, why should it upset me? If she thinks that way, then it's fine.
So Safia Abdullah, was there when you went to meet Farooq Abdullah in 2020.
You make me laugh now. Do you know what all she said to me?
Yeah, tell me.
Isn't it in the book?
It is.
Then, has Safia read that? Why is she not talked about that? When I knocked on the door,
She thought she saw a ghost.
yeah.
And she said, friends are always welcome. That's in the
So
book.
I was a friend then, I'm not a friend now.
So, February.
And how does it matter if I'm not a friend? I mean, as I say, I've said this repeatedly, as far as we are concerned, he is a friend. I can never think of him as anything else but a friend.
I know your regard for Farooq Abdullah.
But that's all. That's all this book is about. In fact, if you remember what Veer said, the book is not objective. And I said, I've never been objective about Dr. Saab. It's been partial. I've been partial to the family. I've been partial to Kashmir. That's the reality.
So I want to come back to the meeting in 2020 in February when you went to meet Farooq Saab, and I remember breaking the story of the meeting, and I said that you went to suss out his mood because New Delhi wanted to know what he might say when he was released, and Delhi was afraid that he would talk about Pakistan, that he would rage against the abrogation.
But he didn't do any of that.
He didn't, and he told you that जो भी होगा अब पार्लियामेंट में होगा.
I haven't had the gumption to tell Dr. Farooq what to do and what not to do. Very rarely has that happened. I said, I think they're going to release you. I didn't know when or how or what, but I said the very fact that I've been sent is an indication they will release you. So media ka jara khayal rakhna. And he said, I have nothing to say to the media. Whatever I have to say, I'll say in Parliament.
In fact, before he went into house arrest, just before, and it's quoted in the book, I remember, Farooq Abdullah saying that, how do you expect us to feel when you have carved a body? You have divided religion, now you want to divide hearts also. He was so upset about 370, and you know that, it is quoted in your book. You have said that Article 370 may have been a fig leaf of dignity, but there was no need to touch that fig leaf and strip the Kashmiri of their dignity. Why do you think the Modi government went ahead and did just that?
In that same paragraph, read it again. As I said, it's English. Read it again. It's in that same paragraph. Read that paragraph again.
208.
208, yeah.
Page number 208.
Yeah, that paragraph that you read it again. Farooq explains it there.
We would have helped, he told me, when I met him in 2020. Why were we not taken into conference?
Read the whole paragraph. You wanted to read the whole paragraph.
Farooq was terribly hurt, just as the BJP had never hidden its its intention
There it is.
towards Kashmir as
Yeah.
far as Article 370.
That's the reason. It's given there.
So it was a part of their manifesto and they went
Yeah.
ahead and abrogated.
It's in that sentence.
But 2 days before the actual abrogation, and it's in your book as well, Farooq Abdullah, his son Omar Abdullah, and a National Conference Member of Parliament, Hasnain Masoodi, called on the Prime Minister. And in your book, when you talk about that meeting, and you're quoting Farooq Abdullah there, Farooq Abdullah says that he even brought up, the unusual deployment of troops
That's right.
to and fro, and he was so nice, sugar wouldn't melt in his mouth.
Yeah.
So the impression they came away with was that what happened finally on August 5th, 2019, at least that was the impression, that it was not going to happen.
That's right. I spoke to Omar about it also. I asked him, and he said we were told nothing. No
So do you
indication.
believe they were misled, or you think that prime ministers would not reveal such information, in
It's
advance?
very difficult to say. But somebody obviously was not being totally truthful or wholly truthful. And I'm not asked this of Masoodi Saab, but since I have spoken to both Dr. Saab and to Omar separately, not together, and both said that we were not told anything. So, and I have not had the opportunity to ask the Prime Minister. And so I would go along with whatever Dr. Saab and Omar have said, that there was no indication. I mean, there may have been indication because there was troop deployment, but they were not told that.
You have worked with Farooq very closely. Everything is detailed in the book. You even talk about how different prime ministers have approached the issue of Kashmir. I read with great interest what you wrote about the relationship between Deve Gowda and Farooq Abdullah, as also between Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in whose prime minister's office you served. Who was Farooq Abdullah most comfortable with? Which prime minister?
Oh, by a huge mile, Devi Gowda. Because I've said this in the book, because for Devi Gowda, Farooq was Kashmir and whatever he did was fine by him. He never questioned it, he never got into arguments with it. And as I know, Devi Gowda remains a friend of Farooq Abdullah. I was hoping to see him there at Omar's swearing in, but I was told he had come, spent a holiday with Farooq and gone back.
Let's come to the Vajpayee days. I know you've done a separate book called The Vajpayee Years, but you also refer to
Now
it.
that you mention the Vajpayee years, every book that I have written has had Kashmir in it. And every book that I have written has had Farooq in it. And people who've read all the books and are familiar with all the books know that there are some repetitions in this book, because otherwise the book would not have been 290 pages or whatever it is. Now I am tickled and I am amused that in the earlier books nobody objected to whatever I had said. Now people are objecting to the same things now, that inaccuracies, the so-called inaccuracies were there in all the books.
Which one are you referring to?
Whichever one they are referring to. Yeah, they say it's full of inaccuracies. For instance, they talk about 1996. So I'd written about 96 in my first book. I think I wrote about it in my third book also. And in this book I've said that was possibly the time, because Delhi desperately needed Farooq, and I think we were closest. Now I think somebody has objected to the fact that how could I suggest the cabinet composition? The conversation was totally different. We had lunch at the Taj. Farooq said, "You must come for my swearing in." I said, "Of course I'll come." And I said, everybody says that your government, your first government was your best, and you only had 4 or 5 ministers. So why don't you go down that road again? Have 4, 5, 7 ministers, and then you can appoint as many as you like. But the fact of the problem or the reality is that Farooq was extremely emotional that day. And he wept while on stage. And while weeping, whoever was there, he kept calling people from the audience, "Aap bhi aa jao, aap bhi aa jao." And he appointed 25 ministers. So, yeah, fine. It was only a suggestion that I had made that if you were to appoint 5, 7 ministers, that you could appoint so many more later on. And he said, "Yeah, I agree." But that's not what happened because of his emotional state of mind at that time.
So let me come back to the Vajpayee years, but before I get specific about the question, I was talking about the betrayals that Farooq Abdullah has had to face. First was 1984 when he was deposed by his sister's husband, which you have dealt with in the book, calling it a very deep mark on his psyche. Second was not being made the vice president as promised to him by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, by L.K. Advani, who was the Home Minister, and by Brajesh Mishra.
I think I've clarified this, that again, I don't know what happened between the Prime Minister and him.
Yes, but you had a direct conversation with Brajesh Mishra, who
was... It happened at our place over dinner, yeah.
That's right.
The conversation was between Brajesh and Farooq. And Brajesh said, "Why don't you come to Delhi, Dr. Saab? Aapko Vice President bana denge." And Farooq was quite happy, he was delighted. That was the time when Brajesh suggested that, we want, Atalji is very, very clear that this election has to be free and fair. So why don't you let it happen under governor's rule? Why don't you step down at that time? And Farooq said, "Theek hai." Farooq's way of thinking, or Farooq's point was that if you stick by what you say, I'll stick by what I say. So when the time actually came and Delhi reminded him, he said, "What governor's rule? I'm good enough."
That's right.
In fact, he was trying to convey, "I'm better than any governor. It's fine."
It's another matter, they lost that election. The NC lost 2002.
Yeah, they lost that election.
Yeah.
They lost the election. So more than that, Umar lost his election. You see, because the National Conference was still the single largest party. But
the PDP and Congress joined hands.
Unfortunately, Umar lost his election from Gandharwal, and that was the end of the story.
So, Umar is now back as Chief Minister. He won the election in 2024.
Yeah.
I believe, and you obviously, you know Kashmir extremely well. I believe the vote was against the abrogation of 370. I believe the vote was an anti-BJP vote. And the vote was, in fact, the stones that the people could not throw in 2019 because of the heavy deployment of troops. Would you agree?
It's in the book. I've quoted Farooq. You must have read that. Then why are you asking me the question?
No, I want you to expand on this.
Like what?
Because Omar Abdullah has a difficult job on his hands. Omar Abdullah has a difficult job on his hands.
Of course he has. Omar said many years ago that this is the most difficult job in the country, and I agree with him. And that's why his father can manage it better than he can.
Do you believe Farooq Abdullah should have become the Chief Minister? Is that what you're saying now?
Yeah, I'm saying that. Farooq said that. Vijay Dhar says that.
In 2024, Farooq Abdullah should have become the Chief Minister.
There's a quote by Vijay Dhar in this.
I know.
Farooq said it to me 3-4 times, that I am going to be Chief Minister.
So then what happened?
What happened is what happened in 2002. Umar lost the election in Baramulla.
No, but NC won in 2024.
Why are you not understanding common sense? If Umar had won his seat in Parliament, he would have gone to Parliament. Then there was no question of his becoming Chief Minister.
It's because he lost Baramulla.
Yeah, he lost, and they won this whole thing. So Farooq said, okay, now it's your turn. You know, you worked hard. We've got 42 seats. So now I'll step back, you become Chief Minister.
You talk about the great bond and the relationship between Farooq Abdullah and Omar Abdullah. In fact, you say that Farooq Abdullah had tears in his eyes on the day of the...
Of course he had tears.
The swearing
Farooq,
in.
whatever anyone might think, Farooq is a very emotional person. He had tears in his eyes. And not only that, as time has gone on, he's become increasingly protective of his son. I think I've said somewhere that now it's not just love for his son which is increased, it's glorification now. So father and son was always a good relationship.
Earlier on in the book, of course, you hinted that it was not as good as it is now.
Yeah, you know, when you're younger and kids are younger, they think of things differently and whatever it is. Yeah.
The one line that I found interesting, if you can elaborate on that he saw more of a father in Vajpayee when he was a part of the Vajpayee government. I'm talking about Omar Abdullah.
I haven't said that. And I wouldn't say that, no.
But he saw a father figure in Vajpayee.
See, that relationship worked out well, but I don't know about a father figure. What Omar thought, Omar never told me. The only thing is that in 2002, he was not as big as he is today. He was then afraid of his father. His father was a much bigger man then. And Omar was conscious of it. So things have changed. Now Omar is, Omar is Chief Minister again. And let me also tell you that in 2008, Kashmir wanted him as Chief Minister. That's how he became Chief Minister. But the father and son relationship, it's like any father and son relationship. You know, people have said a lot of things about Farooq. And he's been a very good father. He's been a very good husband. Basically, I think he's been a very good family person.
You say that at many places in the book.
People don't always understand or appreciate. And the other thing which nobody has asked me till date is about Mrs. Abdullah, because she is also a character in this book. And I have done nothing but praise her. And one of the reasons for that is I met Khalida last summer, and she said the person most admired in our family is Molly, because if she could give her own kidney, then that's the kind of person she is. And then she said, but Farooq remains the most lovable. So I think that's as close to the truth as you can get.
So I was asking you a question about betrayals, and I was counting 3. I think I left out the third. One was the 84 coup we talked about. Second was Farooq Abdullah not becoming the Vice President. The third betrayal, as Farooq saw it, was the abrogation of 370. Now that's history. Supreme Court has endorsed what the Modi government did.
No, I don't think Farooq regarded that as a betrayal. No, you got it wrong. The betrayal really was locking him up. What hurt him was not so much this. This, as he said, was expected of the BJP. But it is or depending on whatever happened in that conversation with the Prime Minister, which I don't know about. But what really, really hurt or disturbed him was that our family, the whole family, beginning with Sheikh Saab, has always been with Delhi. Why did we need to be locked up? Why could we not have been taken into confidence? That's what he was trying to say.
It's interesting that you refer to that meeting, because I did want to ask you this question. You met Farooq Abdullah in February 2020 when he was still under house arrest.
Yeah.
I visited the valley several times after the abrogation. I tried to knock on that same door, but it was shut. Nobody was allowed to meet him. I mean, clearly Delhi allowed you to meet Farooq Abdullah. So, did you feel like you were playing a bit of a, I mean, were you sort of torn? Because on one hand you were meeting a friend, on the other hand you could go only because Delhi allowed you and because the National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval, asked you if you could go and, you know, suss out his mood.
Was it Doval?
Well, in your interviews you have named Doval.
I haven't.
Yes, sir, you have. I will send you a link. You even said that when you came back, you met Doval again. So, was it a tough assignment? Because on one hand, you know, you were meeting a friend who had gone into a shell, who was upset, who was emotional, who had turned to the Quran, who was being asked difficult questions by his grandchildren. I remember, and you've quoted it in the book, his grandchildren asked him, "Is this the India you want us to support?" On the other hand, you also had to convey what Delhi wanted conveyed.
Yeah. No, it was one of my most pleasant jobs or whatever it is, because I wanted very much to meet Farooq, not as a job, but to inquire after his health. And I had rung up the IB head in Srinagar and asked for permission. He said no.
Delhi se puchna padega.
Delhi. So I said, then it doesn't make sense. I am in Delhi and this thing. Then somebody at some stage thought that if this guy is wanting to meet Farooq, then why not send him to meet Farooq? And I was very happy to go. No, nothing. There are no two ways about that. It was, I wanted to go and inquire about his health. That was my first and foremost thing. And secondly, I was also happy because it indicated that Delhi now needed to release him. I was happy, yeah. I haven't said this, but I was happy. I mean, I told Farooq, I said, you know, you would understand that since I have come,
they're thinking of releasing you.
They're thinking of releasing you. So just be careful what you say to the media.
So before I end, allow me to ask two questions. One, you talk about Omar having to wear this crown of thorns. He is the chief minister of a union territory. Article 370 is gone. In the manifesto, he promised to continue the fight for Article 370, to continue the fight against the release of detainees who are still in jail under the Public Safety Act. He's trying to negotiate a relationship with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah. How difficult a task is that? I'm asking you this because we know what Delhi is capable of doing. We know what they did, for example, with Arvind Kejriwal.
No, how difficult is it for Omar?
To negotiate this relationship with a party that has, stripped Kashmir of its dignity. At least that's how they feel.
Of course it's difficult. And I wrote a piece when I came back after that swearing in that I think, for the credibility of the Chief Minister and for Delhi's credibility, the sooner that statehood is restored, the better it is for everybody. But my saying something doesn't make any difference. But I have a question for you, since you're a very old friend. I can understand, the media enjoys controversy. But nobody has asked me about, about the good things in the book, about all that I've written about Farooq, and all that I've said about Farooq or about the family or anything. Nobody has asked.
We've just had a discussion on a lot of things about the book and your friendship.
No. But the thing is that almost without exception, everybody who was there at that launch and who has read the book has said that it's a beautiful book. Now, let me tell you, that day, you say it doesn't matter, but it does matter. If that day the headline in the Hindustan Times had been the Chief Minister and the spy is full of praise only for Farooq Abdullah, there would have been no controversy. There would have been no controversy. So there are people who want to create a controversy, who want to build a controversy, and well, it's okay.
I mean, why would the media want to create a controversy?
No, the media is quite often paid to create controversy.
Do you see statehood being restored, and how soon do you see it
I don't see it being restored. No, it has to be restored. But I don't see it being restored as early as Omar imagines, or as early as Omar keeps repeating. And I don't blame him, because he is the Chief Minister. And like you mentioned a little while ago, that Sajjad has said this many times, both within and outside the assembly, the Chief Minister. You said something you were saying something very different during the elections, and now you're saying something quite different. So Omar is having a tough time, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to balance Kashmir and Delhi for anybody. Farooq is one of those exceptional politicians or leaders who could do it. He always managed to do it, and that is why his greatest betrayal was Indira Gandhi. Because the Gandhis at that point of time, in particular, Omar became Chief Minister. One of the reasons was that Mrs. Gandhi wanted him as Chief Minister. And she told the Sheikh that, why are you wasting time? Get on with it. Because she felt that he is the best person.
So let me ask you in the end, would you like to convey through this interview with the Quint anything to Farooq Abdullah, who clearly is upset? You call it an unlikely friendship. It's turned out to be, an unlikely friendship.
It's a beautiful friendship. I have nothing to convey to Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab knows much more than any of us knows. And, for me, it's been a beautiful friendship. Apart from being unlikely, it's been a beautiful friendship. And it's not going to change in my way of thinking.
Do you fear, last question, do you fear that it's over?
No, I don't fear at all that it's over. I don't.
Because you know the man.
I don't even believe it's over. But what is there to fear?
No, fear because I know how much regard and respect and value you have for Farooq Abdullah.
Yeah, I do. That won't change. So that's that. The rest is for the others to decide,
So congratulations on the book, and thank you for speaking to the Quint.